The Council's secret meeting. The void was endless. Space yawned in every direction. Black cold, eternal stars blinked like dying candles in a cathedral of silence. And floating in that nothingness was a rock no one remembered. Vecren 6, a dead world orbiting a dying star. Forgotten by trade routes, abandoned by empires. It held no wealth, no power, no history, which made it the perfect place to plan genocide. 7 colossal ships hung above its cracked surface, motionless predators orbiting a carcass. Inside the subterranean war chamber carved into Vecren's bedrock, the most powerful leaders in the galaxy gathered in shadow. The Vranian High Speaker, a towering insectoid with sapphire carapace, and a voice like grinding metal loomed over the central holotable. One by one, the faces of the Aben warlords, the Sarathi technocrats, the Rissak dominators and others flickered into place. And above the table, Earth hovered, blue-green peaceful. A mistake, the High Speaker rasped. Humanity was a mistake. They spoke of humans with contempt, a young species barely clawing its way out of its solar system. Disorganized, primitive savage, but somehow dangerous. They had cobbled together fleets from scrap and stolen tech, and yet they kept winning. Colonies fell to them, war fronts collapsed under their relentless advance. They fight like cornered beasts, growled the Aven, general wings twitching with unease. No diplomacy, no surrender, just war. The Council had seen enough. Earth must be purged. Silence fell. Then a clawed limb sliced the air. Total eradication, the High Speaker announced, his voice clicking with a finality. We strike their homeworld before they anchor further. It was decided within one galactic cycle, a coalition fleet would descend on Earth with enough firepower to erase its existence. No survivors, no legacy, just ash. But before the war table could dim, alarms screamed. A crimson light bathed the chamber. The station AI screeched in broken syllables. Unauthorized fleet detected, multiple warp signatures inbound, hostile configuration confirmed. The Council turned toward the viewing window and saw the impossible. Humanity had arrived. Hundreds of ships burst from hyperspace, fanned across the stars like blades drawn in unison. They didn't shimmer like elegant vessels of the coalition. No, these were brutal, scarred beasts. Monsters of war forged from wreckage and hate. Leading them, the ISS Retribution, a dreadnought larger than any ship ever known, bristling with weapons, pulsing red with charged death. A voice broke through every encrypted channel, overriding all protocols. It was calm, human deadly. No one was meant to arrive. That's too bad. A moment of stillness. Then hell was unleashed. The first barrage turned orbital platforms into clouds of fire. Plasma lances and kinetic storms lit the sky like Judgment Day. Coalition commanders scrambled, but they were too slow. Humanity didn't wait. They didn't announce. They conquered. Inside the chamber, panic took root. This is madness, the Aven warlord shrieked. They're attacking here now. They should have no coordination. No, the Vranian High Speaker whispered, mandibles twitching in horror. They knew. The realization rippled like poison. They knew about the meeting, about the strike. Before another word could be spoken, the chamber doors exploded inward. Smoke flooded the room. Shadows moved with surgical grace. Armored figures in matte black gear, weapons raised human strike teams. The first to fall was the Aben general. His ornate feathers erupted in a bloom of blood as rounds tore through him. Others barely drew breath before being cut down. The leader of the assault team stepped forward, armor-battered visor glowing. You thought you could decide our fate behind closed doors? The voice echoed through his helmet. We heard every word. He pulled off his helmet, a scarred face, piercing eyes human. With a flick of his wrist, he tossed a device onto the war table. A signal jammer. They had been listening the whole time. The High Speaker recoiled. This is a mistake. Your people will suffer for this. The human smiled not kindly. Oh no, he said, raising his rifle. You're the ones who are going to suffer. Outside, the fleet blazed across the stars. Inside, the gods of the old order were dying. And Vecren 6, forgotten unimportant, had just become the spark of a new galactic age. The assault on Vecren 6. The war chamber was no longer a room for debate. It was a battlefield. Human boots pounded against alien marble. The thunder of control bursts echoing across the walls. Smoke hissed from shattered consoles. Sparks fell like fireflies in a nightmare. High-ranking officials, the architects of empires, were reduced to fleeing prey. Some crawling, some bleeding, some frozen in sheer disbelief. A second squad breached from the northern quarter, moving with perfect coordination. Their rifles barked in deadly rhythm, cutting down guards before they could even raise their weapons. A Rissic technocrat revered for centuries died with a data scepter in his hand and 3 rounds through his thorax. The Vranian high speaker backed toward the rear exit, limbs trembling, compound eyes wide with something he hadn't felt in 1,000 cycles: fear. "You don't understand," he hissed. "We kept the galaxy stable. We maintained order." The human strike commander, still helmetless, his face a mask of grim resolve, walked through the ruin like a ghost of judgment. "No," he said coldly. "You kept it obedient. There's a difference." Outside, the skies burned. Vecran 6's upper atmosphere lit up with the fury of war. Human warships moving in unified waves blasted through the Coalition's defense ring. Capital ships split open like fruit. Escape pods never launched. No warning, no mercy. The ISS Retribution led the charge, cannons glowing like the hearts of dying suns. It fired barrage after barrage into the Coalition's support fleet. Some ships turned to flee. None escaped. Earth's banner, black and silver stitched with the emblem of defiance, was raised in orbit over Vecran 6. In the lower levels of the station, human ground teams advanced room by room. Each squad was a symphony of efficiency. While the Coalition's ceremonial guards hesitated, shouted orders, panicked, Earth's soldiers advanced with ice in their veins. "Room clear. Move up." Breach on 3. Explosions, screams, silence again. The halls of power were being cleansed with fire and steel. On the eastern flank, the Avon delegation tried to organize a counterstrike. Their elite wing guards took flight down the corridor only to be incinerated midair by a railgun blast. Their feathers, once symbols of nobility, drifted like ash over the burning floor. The Vranian high speaker, now limping, found himself cornered near a maintenance shaft. 3 of his limbs were slick with ichor. 2 of his advisors lay dead behind him. And then the human returned. He stepped through the shadows, rifle lowered but ready. His armor was scorched, dented, still smoldering from the last engagement. Yet he walked like a predator that knew the prey had no escape. "You think this is insane," the soldier said, calm as winter. "But we're not here for negotiation. We came for answers. We came for justice." "You came to die," the high speaker rasped. "You cannot win. You're outnumbered. Entire empires will rise against you." The soldier raised an eyebrow. "We heard that before, and yet here we are." He stepped closer, unslinging a small black sphere from his hip and placing it on the floor. A signal beacon. It blinked once, twice, and then the feed changed. Across the station, every remaining screen flared to life. Live holographics from orbit filled the halls, showing the unthinkable. Coalition warships, some of them centuries-old monuments to galactic dominance, were burning, hulls torn. Command decks breached, entire fleets in disarray. But it was the coordination that terrified the Coalition most. These humans weren't a rabble of pirates or upstart revolutionaries. They were a military machine. Tight formations, fleet-wide sync, combined arms doctrine that adapted in real time, artificial intelligence coordinating warp entries to trap retreating ships, boarding teams breaching through shielded hulls as if they were paper. Every tactic was ruthless. Every blow was surgical. Humanity had studied their enemies, and now they were executing them. In the war chamber, a second human squad arrived, dragging what was left of a Sharathi admiral behind them. One soldier stepped forward, saluted the commander. "Chamber secure, sir. Remaining council members have either been neutralized or detained." The human leader gave a slight nod, then turned to the Vranian high speaker, still trembling, still struggling to comprehend. "You thought we'd wait for you to strike Earth," he said, voice low. "But we already struck here." He unclipped something from his belt, a recording device, and threw it onto the war table. "We heard every word of your plan. Thanks for the free intel." The high speaker shuddered. This is a mistake," he stammered. "The galaxy needs the council. You don't know what comes next. You don't understand the balance we kept." The human leaned in, close eyes like storm clouds, voice like a gunshot. "We're not here to keep your balance. We're here to end it." From above, a tremor shook the station. The orbital platforms were collapsing. Coalition forces were attempting to regroup, only to be cut down by a wave of human reinforcements, warping into the outer system. And in the center of it all, Vecran 6 burned. A forgotten rock. A meeting no one was meant to witness. Now it was the opening salvo of a new war. As the Coalition's last defenders fell, and the ISS Retribution loomed like a god of vengeance above the smoldering world, one truth became clear. Humanity had not just arrived, they had come to take the throne. Humanity declares its era. The war chamber was a ruin. What once held the whispers of galactic power now echoed with the sharp clank of human boots on blood-stained marble. Debris littered the floor. Bodies, counselors, warlords, centuries-old rulers lay broken across the room. their ceremonial garments torn and scorched. In the center of it all, the Vranian High Speaker knelt. His once glimmering carapace was dulled by soot and ichor. His limbs, once symbols of authority, trembled beneath the crushing weight of what he had witnessed. Human soldiers stood in a loose perimeter, rifles low but ready. Their faces were unreadable, calm, disciplined, lethal. No cheering, no arrogance, just silence, the silence of a mission completed. Then came him. Fleet Admiral Elias Sullivan stepped into the chamber like a man walking into his office. His uniform was scorched from battle, his left pauldron dented where shrapnel had struck, but his presence was undiminished, radiating command, focus, and finality. He did not speak immediately. He simply looked at the High Speaker. The alien looked back, his voice little more than a rasp. "You believe this is a victory." Sullivan didn't flinch. "It's not belief," he said. "It's history." The human officer behind him placed a compact console onto the shattered council table. Its display flickered to life with a blinking red icon. The High Speaker recoiled as if struck. "You want me to surrender?" Sullivan nodded once. "You will issue the command. Every ship, every station, every council-held world, stand down effective immediately." The High Speaker let out a strained, bitter laugh. "You are insane. Do you think the galaxy will kneel to you? You think our allies will watch this and do nothing?" Sullivan leaned forward, voice low-edged in steel. "We're not asking them to kneel. We're just giving them a choice." He tapped his wrist. The chamber darkened. Dozens of holographic screens flared to life, illuminating the wreckage. They showed what no one in the galaxy had seen before: coalition fleets in full retreat, council troops dropping weapons, cities once flying the banners of oppression, now raising Earth's colors. And then something even worse. The images began changing. New worlds, new systems, not Vecran. Not just here. Rebellions were erupting across the galaxy. The ripple effect had begun. Species long crushed under the weight of the Council's order were rising not in chaos but in alignment with humanity. "You see," Sullivan said, watching the alien's mandibles tremble, "you were never feared because you were strong. You were feared because no one had ever stood up to you." And now he added, "We did." The High Speaker's limbs spasmed. He stared at the console like it was a weapon aimed at his soul. "You can resist," Sullivan offered, "but every second you delay, another world rises. Another empire questions you. Another fleet defects." Or he stepped closer. "You can be the first to admit what the galaxy already knows." The red indicator pulsed, waiting. The chamber was silent. The High Speaker Zelvor of the Vranian Corps, once voice of absolute galactic power, closed his eyes. His breath rasped through his mandibles. And then with a final shudder, he reached out. He pressed the button. The console glowed bright, connecting to the central relay. Across thousands of systems, from border outposts to capital metropolises, every screen flickered. The image of Zelvor appeared bloodied, defeated, kneeling before the flags of Earth. "This is High Speaker Zelvor." His voice began cracked but unmistakable. "Of the Galactic Council. Every ship, every system, every corner of the Empire watched. I am broadcasting this message to all sectors, all remaining forces. The war is over." The galaxy held its breath. "I call upon all Council-aligned powers to stand down, effective immediately. Resistance is futile." He choked on the words. "The humans have taken Vecran 6. They have shattered our fleets. They are now the dominant power in the galaxy." Gasp, silence, and in distant corners of space, quiet celebration. Sullivan watched without emotion. The soldiers behind him did not move. The message would echo through history, not because of the words, but because of the image: the Galactic Council surrendering on its knees, not to diplomacy, but to fire. The transmission ended. Zelvor collapsed the effort, draining the last of his strength. Sullivan turned to one of his officers. "Send the signal to the resistance cells," he said. "Every rebel colony that's bled under their boot. Let them see who just gave up." The officer nodded. The order went out. Sullivan crouched beside the trembling alien, studying him like a fading relic. "Hell of a speech," he said dryly. "Not bad, considering you wanted me dead 5 hours ago." Zelvor didn't respond. He stared blankly at the floor, at the ruined chamber that once ruled the stars. "You thought we weren't meant to arrive." Sullivan continued standing. He looked toward the viewport. The capital of Vecran 6 burned beneath him. Earth's flags fluttered over crumbling spires. Human ships now patrolled the lanes once forbidden to them. "Turns out we weren't just meant to arrive," he said quietly. "We were meant to take over." And so it was. The Galactic Council had fallen. Its throne shattered, its dominion erased. The stars now belonged to someone else, to the species no one expected. The ones born in war, the ones who refused to die quietly. Humanity had declared its era, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The rise of the Ashen Claw. Year 2 of the human era began not with celebration, but with blood. The Galactic Council was gone, its banners reduced to ash and scattered across the void. But peace didn't come, not yet, because from the ruins of that fallen empire, something darker emerged, something more dangerous. They called themselves the Ashen Claw. No government, no borders, no mercy. They weren't trying to restore the old council. They were something new, born from vengeance, bound by hatred, united by a singular purpose to destroy humanity before it could rule the stars. The first sign came quietly. A human-controlled trade station near the Vexus Expanse lost contact. When Sullivan's scouts arrived, they found only drifting wreckage, twisted metal-frozen corpses, hulls torn open like paper. There were no survivors, no demands, no warnings, just a symbol left burned into one of the inner walls, a claw gripping a burning star. The message was clear. You thought the war was over. We're just getting started. Inside the war room aboard HSS Retribution, Admiral Sullivan studied the footage. His eyes didn't blink. His jaw tightened as his top intelligence officer, Lieutenant Harper, spoke in a low, tight voice. This isn't like the Council's forces, she said. These tactics, they're precise, ruthless. No looting, no occupation, just destruction. They're adapting, Sullivan muttered. They've stopped playing Empire, now they're playing to win. He tapped the symbol on the screen. The Ashen Claw, he whispered. They had no central government, no diplomats, just scattered remnants of former council warlords who had cast aside their politics for something worse, a doctrine. They trained in secret modified old tech with terrifying results. Their ships moved like phantoms, hit with surgical fury, then vanished into the void. They weren't trying to reclaim their empire. They were trying to burn humanity's down before it began. The first real battle came at Arcadia Prime, a flourishing new human colony. It started with a pulse jammer, then a communications blackout. Then the sky ignited. Ashen Claw warships dropped from hyperspace sleeker than before, re-armored and outfitted with reverse-engineered Earth tech. They hit fast, hard, and without hesitation. Human defenses responded. Fighters scrambled, railguns screamed, plasma cannons lit up the stratosphere. But something was wrong. The enemy didn't break. They weren't like the old coalition fleets that relied on reputation to maintain order. These soldiers were fanatics. They didn't retreat. They didn't hesitate. They adapted mid-battle, countering human tactics with terrifying precision. Suicide rams, ghost flanking, jammed AI networks. For the first time since humanity had taken the stage, they were outplayed. The sky over Arcadia burned for 36 hours. Sullivan himself watched from orbit, jaw clenched, knuckles white. When the Ashen Claw finally withdrew, they left behind thousands of human dead. The colony still stood, but barely, a victory in name only. And something had changed. For the first time, the war didn't feel like conquest. It felt like survival. In the following months, the galaxy trembled as the war shifted. Human fleets that had once marched from system to system now found themselves on the defensive. Supply lines were cut. Remote colonies were destabilized. Civilians were slaughtered in coordinated raids designed not to gain ground but to spread fear. The Ashen Claw didn't want territory. They wanted humanity to bleed. Inside the Retribution, Sullivan stood before the central star map. Dozens of systems blinked red, each one a strike zone, each one a scar. Harper stood beside him, her voice clipped with urgency. We're losing ground. Too fast. At this rate, we won't be running an empire. We'll be fighting for scraps. Sullivan didn't respond immediately. He stared at the stars, at the lines once drawn in conquest, now unraveling under the weight of guerrilla war. For years, they had fought like rebels, defiant, furious, wild, but they weren't rebels anymore. They were rulers now, and that meant they couldn't just strike back. They had to lead. Finally, he turned to his officers. His voice was steel. We stop reacting, he said. We take the fight to them. He pointed at a cluster of star systems near the galactic core dead space. No trade, no life, no reason to go there. Except one, Korov Prime, once a council military bastion, abandoned for years. Now intelligence showed activity. Power surges, cloaked ship movements, encrypted Ashen Claw transmissions. It wasn't a base, it was their home, and it was time to burn it. Operation Iron Veil was launched under blackout protocols. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, over 500 warships dropped into Korov Prime's orbit, like judgment from the stars. The Ashen Claw was waiting, and they were ready. The void exploded. Swarms of dread fighters tore into human lines. Ashen capital ships unleashed plasma storms that melted cruisers in seconds. Korov's planetary railguns lit the sky, firing shells the size of shuttles straight into orbit. The battle was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. For every Ashen ship destroyed, 3 human warships burned. It wasn't war. It was a slaughter. Sullivan watched from the Retribution's bridge eyes burning. "This isn't working," Harper said beside him. "We're getting picked apart." Sullivan's fists clenched. Then without blinking, he gave the order. "Deploy the ground teams. We take it from the inside." Humanity's fleets had failed to breach Korov from space, so now they would do what they always did best: drop into hell, fight their way through it, and win. War turns against humanity. They fell like meteors. Drop pods screamed through Korov Prime's choking atmosphere, trailing fire and smoke across the blood-red sky. Human titans, colossal warwalkers clad in ablative armor, slammed into the cracked surface like iron gods, sending shockwaves through the shattered ruins of the old empire. And then the Marines followed. Thousands of soldiers in exo armor surged from the smoking craters. Their visors glowed with tactical feeds. Their rifles sang in bursts of thunder. Each squad moved with machine-like precision, advancing block by block, scanning, clearing, securing. This was no longer conquest. This was survival. Korov Prime was a fortress, a labyrinth of fortified ruins carved from the bones of a long-dead empire. Every alley was a choke point, every building a potential ambush, and the Ashen Claw knew every inch of it. The first engagements were brutal. Human squads were cut off, funneled into killing zones, ambushed by hidden turrets and suicide drones. The Ashen Claw had turned the city into a slaughterhouse. Even with overwhelming numbers, humanity bled. Sullivan watched it all from the mobile command outpost, his face hard, unreadable. Every tactical update brought more casualties. Every ping from the medevac network carried another squad loss. "We underestimated them," Harper said grimly, eyes fixed on the tactical map. "They've been preparing for this for years." "They lured us here," Sullivan muttered. "They wanted us to come." Still, the order was given. "Push forward. Break their lines. We finish this or we die trying." The street battles were nightmarish. Human soldiers engaged Ashen warriors in hand-to-hand combat among ruins laced with traps, explosives hidden in walls, shrapnel mines triggered by blood scent, razor drones shrieking overhead. Ashen Claw fighter didn't retreat, didn't surrender. They burned themselves alive before capture. Every step forward was paid in blood. Entire platoons were lost securing a single boulevard. Titans were brought down by coordinated strikes using anti-orbital plasma charges salvaged from old council stockpiles. Hospitals became bunkers. Bunkers became mass graves. And yet humanity pushed on. They always did. It was at the heart of the ruins that Elias Sullivan finally stepped onto the battlefield. He didn't have to. He was an admiral, the architect of Earth's rise, the strategist who brought the council to its knees. But Korov wasn't a war you commanded from orbit. It was a war you bled for. So he walked through the ruins in dented exo armor, his rifle slung across his back, a plasma sidearm holstered at his side. He fought alongside his soldiers, ducked under Ashen fire, dragged wounded Marines to cover with his own hands. And they followed him not because he was their commander, but because he never asked them to go anywhere. He wouldn't go first. Bit by bit, the tide turned. Humanity clawed its way through the ash, block by block, room by room, until finally they reached the heart of it all, a towering citadel of obsidian alloy, blackened by age, bristling with cannons and hate. The last fortress of the Ashen Claw. Inside, at its highest peak, stood Dorvan Ven, the last surviving Grand Marshal of the Galactic Council, the one who had refused to die with the old Empire, the one who had turned ashes into weapons. He watched the approach from the broken balcony, his mandibles curled in bitter satisfaction. Sullivan led the charge. The final firefight blazed through the citadel's broken halls. Grenades cracked the air. Pulse rifles hummed. The screams of the dying echoed against ancient stone. By the time they reached the summit, only a handful of Ashen warriors remained battered, bloodied and still fighting like zealots. And there he stood, Dorvan Ven cloaked in the battle-scarred remnants of his old rank, armor cracked, one eye gone and yet still defiant. "You have fought well, human," he rasped as Sullivan approached, rifle raised. "But you made a mistake." Sullivan narrowed his eyes. "What mistake?" Dorvan smiled, a bitter, hollow thing. "I was never fighting to win." Then he lifted a small control rod from his belt and plunged it into the ground. Beneath the citadel, deep within the crust of Korov Prime, something detonated. Old warheads Council plasma cores, ancient weapons buried and forgotten, now awakened by design. The ground shook, the sky cracked. Korov Prime began to die. Sullivan's voice rang through every comms channel. All units emergency evac. Get to the dropships now. Soldiers ran. Dropships screamed toward the surface. Titans turned and charged back through ruins to shield their retreating squads. The planet split like a fruit struck by lightning. Mountains crumbled, oceans boiled. The sky became fire. Sullivan helped drag the last wounded soldier into a carrier before leaping aboard himself, armor glowing red from heat. As the ship lifted, he looked back. The final image of Dorvan Ven, a silhouette consumed by fire, laughing as the world collapsed around him. Korov Prime died screaming. They made it out, just barely. The fleet jumped seconds before the planet imploded, hurling waves of molten debris into the void. Of the 500 warships Earth had brought to Korov, over 200 were gone. 1 million lives burned away in a trap humanity had walked into with open eyes. But the Ashen Claw was dead. Every last leader, every stronghold, every fleet, gone. The war was over, and humanity had won, but no one cheered. Not in the war room, not on the decks, not back on Earth. Because the price had been too high. Because the blood still hadn't dried. Because this wasn't a parade. It was a funeral. Final transmission from Earth. Command to all colonies, all forces, all allies. The last remnants of the old empire have been eradicated. Let history remember, we did not win with words. We did not win with treaties. We won with fire. The price of victory. The stars were quiet again. Korov Prime no longer existed. Where once a war-torn world bristled with towers and weapons, there now floated a graveyard of molten rock and drifting wreckage. The ashes of the Ashen Claw scattered into the void, carried away by solar winds. But silence did not mean peace. It meant the eye of the storm. Aboard the HSS Retribution, Admiral Elias Sullivan stood before the wide viewport, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Behind him, the war room was dim, no more alerts, no new enemy fleet reports, just the soft hum of systems running in on low power, as if even the ship itself was trying to catch its breath. Harper stood nearby, nursing a cracked data pad. "The Ashen Claw is gone," she said quietly. "Confirmed kills on every high-ranking warlord. No major signals in their former sectors." Sullivan didn't respond. She hesitated. "It's over." His eyes stayed locked on the stars. "No," he said at last, "it's just beginning." Across the galaxy, the old order was dead. The Galactic Council, once a web of domination stretching across thousands of worlds, had collapsed. Some former allies tried to resist, rallying old fleets under forgotten banners. Others simply vanished into deep space, hoping to outlast Earth's reach. But most surrendered. Some called it liberation. Others called it conquest. It didn't matter. Earth's symbol, once dismissed as the mark of a primitive race, now flew over the capitals of worlds that had ruled humanity like livestock a generation ago. Trade routes were redrawn, laws rewritten, alliances forged not through treaties, but through necessity. And in the ashes of what was a new message spread like wildfire, "You tried to erase us. Now you answer to us." The transition was not smooth. Some species welcomed human leadership, glad to be free of the Council's brutal taxes and biological suppression protocols. Others fought back in scattered insurgencies. But Earth had learned how to deal with rebellions quickly and permanently. And then there were the opportunists. Worlds that had once hidden in the shadows of the Council now emerged, offering resources, fleets, knowledge, all hoping to buy favor with the new rulers of the stars. It was messy, bloody, and perfect. But it worked. Inside Earth's new capital complex, a repurposed former Council stronghold on Vecran, 6 leaders from dozens of systems met under one banner. Not as equals, but as survivors. And at the center of it all, Admiral Elias Sullivan. He did not seek power. He did not sit on a throne, but every word he spoke rippled across the stars like law. He was the one who had planned Earth's rise from the shadows, the one who had led the first strike, the one who had refused to kneel. To the galaxy, he became something more than human. He became inevitable, but Sullivan knew better. He knew the cost. Korov Prime was a Pierre-Heat victory, over 200 ships lost, 1 million soldiers gone, families shattered, worlds grieving. Humanity had bled for its seat at the table and found that the table was already on fire. He kept a record of every name lost in the Korov invasion. Every squad leader, every engineer, every Marine. The file sat on a private terminal in his quarters. He read it every night. In the 3rd month after the Ashen Claw's fall, Earth transmitted a message to the galaxy. It was broadcast in every major language, on every frequency across every known system. A man's voice, calm, firm, undeniable. Sullivan's voice to every species, every world, every survivor of the old order. Hear this. The war is over. Humanity has taken the stage. You can join us or you can fight us. But either way, the galaxy belongs to us now. And the galaxy listened. Some cheered, some wept, some began sharpening blades in secret. But all understood the truth. No one was meant to arrive, but humanity came anyway. And when they did, they took everything. The old council archives, once sealed to lesser races, were cracked open by Earth's data cores. Forbidden technologies, precursor maps, lost species, hidden threats. One by one, the myths of the galaxy were uncovered and Earth prepared. New fleets were forged, not just for dominance, but for defense. Because Sullivan knew something else, something he hadn't spoken aloud to even his closest commanders. The Ashen Claw was not the end. It was just the first reaction. The galaxy was bigger than anyone understood. The Council had suppressed hundreds of sectors. Earth had barely explored a fraction of what lay beyond the known rim. And when humanity pushed outward, as they always did, something would push back. But Earth would be ready. They weren't just a species anymore. They were a force. They had taken the galaxy's best shot, centuries of manipulation, war, betrayal, and stood back up. Stronger, smarter, angrier. No longer asking for a place in the stars. Now they owned them. And woe to anyone who thought they could take that away. In the private meditation chamber of the old council throne hall, Sullivan lit a small flame. No ceremony, no words, just a single gesture. For the fallen, for the million voices lost in the dark. The flame flickered, casting long shadows against the ancient walls. He whispered one final promise just for them. You weren't forgotten. You were the price, and they'll never forget what it cost to beat us. The Age of Fire begins, year 4 of the human era. The galaxy had changed, once ruled by 1,000 alien tongues and a council drunk on ancient power. Now it bent slowly, bitterly, but unmistakably toward a single voice. Earth's, the human dominion, was not yet an empire in name, but in reality it was everything the Galactic Council had once claimed to be vast, unrelenting, feared. Its war banners flew over 200 star systems. Human fleets patrolled old trade routes once forbidden to their kind. Rebel worlds had gone silent. Insurgencies burned out in days, not months. And yet Sullivan did not sleep easy. He stood aboard the HSS Retribution, gazing out at the cold stars with a familiar weight in his chest. Peace was a lie. He'd always known that. War wasn't something you won. It was something you survived. In the Galactic East, a new anomaly pulsed from the edge of the Perseid Expanse, an uncharted region long ignored by the Council probes sent by Earth's exploratory fleet, vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no signal, just silence. Harper brought him the report personally. She didn't speak as she handed over the tablet. Her face said enough. Sullivan read the last telemetry feed, gravitational distortion energy spikes in a single frame, just one before the probe blinked out of existence. In that frame, something massive, metallic, and very much not human. He set the tablet down, expression grim. They were watching us, he said. Harper frowned. Who? He didn't answer, because he wasn't sure yet. Meanwhile, whispers spread through the outer colonies, of ships that moved like shadows, leaving no heat signature, of ruins on dead planets that weren't Council design, older, colder, impossible, of a signal repeating on a loop in a language no AI could decipher. Some said the Council had found something beyond the rim and buried it. It isn't. Some said that Earth and rising to power had awakened it, but the truth remained hidden for now. Back on Vecran 6, the capital of the new Dominion, Sullivan walked alone through the Hall of Echoes, once the Council's central command center. Its gold and crystal floors had been reforged into steel. Its walls lined not with alien propaganda, but with names etched in silver, spanning 20 floors. Each name a human lost in the fires of galactic war. He ran his hand across a column, stopped at a familiar one. Private Jonah Hale, age 19, Arcadia Prime. A kid who volunteered to be first on the ground. A kid Sullivan had never met. A kid who had died in the first real battle against the Ashen Claw. You died for more than just Earth, he whispered. You died to change history. And they had. Soon after the war ended, humanity convened its first interstellar assembly. Not as a council, not as a democracy, but as something entirely new. A voice of fire, a singular rotating command chosen not by lineage, not by wealth, but by merit on the battlefield and in diplomacy. And the first to be named, Elias Sullivan. He refused the title of emperor. He accepted the burden of leadership, and the galaxy listened, not because of tradition, but because of fear. because of respect, because humanity had earned it in blood. From the ruins of war came order. Earth's engineers rebuilt shattered systems, reopened ancient jump gates, introduced replicator tech to starving planets that had once been kept dependent by the Council. They did what their enemies never expected. They shared power. But make no mistake, they did not forget. The human dominion didn't rule through compassion. It ruled through memory. The memory of genocide, of underestimation, of a council that plotted to erase them in secret. That memory became law. No world may vote to erase another. No species may be ruled by birthright, and no meeting shall ever be held in secret, because that's how they tried to kill us. And yet, peace remained a blade balanced on a thread, because Earth had risen too far too fast. In dark corners of the galaxy, old enemies stirred, remnants of the Ashen Claw, alien warlords who had vanished into deep space, sleeper cells buried in old council colonies. And then there was the signal, still pulsing, still undecoded, still getting stronger. Inside the Dominion's strategic core, Harper approached Sullivan with the latest intelligence report. This came from the Vega Fringe unmapped system. No council record, no known species, but she hesitated. The structure matches. Nothing. Not even precursor relics. It's big, sir. Very big. Sullivan stared at the image. A megastructure blacker than space, ringed with lights that seemed to look back. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then, tell R&D to ready Titan-class warships. Harper blinked. We just finished rebuilding. I know, he said, turning toward the stars again. But we won't get another warning shot, not like last time. In the void, something ancient moved, something that had slept through empires, something that now had noticed Earth. Final broadcast year 5 of the human era. The voice of fire speaks. We were not meant to arrive, but we did. You told us we were lesser. You lied. You told us we were weak. You were wrong. And now, we are the fire at the edge of your stars. Welcome to the human era.